Hello, everybody. In case you're new around here, my name's Oliver G. I run a podcast called The Earful Tower, and I'm sitting in midnight in Paris on the steps of the Saint-Étienne-du-Mont Church for a reason. And that reason is because I had a dream the other night that Ernest Hemingway, the great American writer, he visited me in my dream and he said, Oliver, if you really want to meet me, come to the steps, these exact steps that I'm sitting on. And he said, and we can chat. I'll show you my neighborhood. And I said, Ernest, that sounds like a great idea. I started asking for details and he faded away. I woke up in the morning, wrote it down, midnight in Paris, Sunday, Ernest Hemingway, Latin Quarter. The city's surprisingly busy. We're about 4 minutes maybe from midnight. And quite honestly, I don't know what to expect. What I do know is that I did a podcast very similar to this, and I'll show you what I'm looking at in a second. I did a podcast really similarly to this, and Hemingway showed up. And we had a great chat, and it was really interesting, and I can only hope that a similar kind of thing is going to happen tonight. What I ask from you, if Hemingway shows up, which none of us know at the moment, what I ask from you is that you guys ask some intelligent questions, help me out if I get starstruck here, and we'll see if we can do this together. So, just to make sure that everything's working on this live video, keep saying hello and tell me where you're watching from. It looks to me like people are watching from all over the world. In fact, it looks like there are a lot of people watching. Okay, and what are we, 2 minutes off? I thought initially that there'd be bells chiming, but it feels like that would be unlikely on a Sunday in Paris. But what I'm going to do is show you around. I think we've got about 2 minutes. If Hemingway shows up, we'll go for a walk. If he doesn't, I'll be looking pretty stupid, and I don't know. I guess maybe I'll take you for a walk anyway. People watching all over the world, great. Okay, let's have a look at what I'm looking at. So this is Paris on a Sunday night. You can hear a lot of voices in the background, and that's because some people have come to sit here as well. I'll show you the Pantheon, and then I'll sit down, and by then, it should be about midnight. Here's the street. The street is called Rue de la Montagne de Geneviève. Here's the Pantheon, or the Pantheon up there. Bonsoir. A few people sitting on the steps as well of this church. If you've seen a movie called Midnight in Paris, these very steps too feature. So I see a few people watching have actually seen these same steps. Now, I'm going to sit down and wait. Hopefully the people in the background aren't too loud. Maybe if you've got questions already, it could be a good time to start asking them. And I'm watching. What is this address? So I'm sitting on the church of I'll say it in English first, Saint-Étienne-du-Mont, or Saint-Étienne-du-Mont, like that. And you can come and find this pretty easily. There's a beautiful alleyway over there. And now I'm starting to get worried because I know it's around midnight and no one showed up. I'm starting to get a little bit despondent, a little bit embarrassed. I see 160 people are watching. What do we do if Hemingway doesn't show up? Miss Corbita wrote it exactly right. Can you ask Mr. Hemingway what advice he'd give to writers struggling with motivation? That's a good one, I can ask him that. Though I'm starting to worry. We're getting close to midnight. No one's here. Leslie wants to know who's filming. I'm filming. Oliver G, podcaster. And I don't know, just sort of looking around the quiet corners to see if anyone shows up. It just doesn't seem to be. Oh, that scooter got me excited. I thought someone would. No. Look, I think it struck midnight by the time. I'm going to talk to you guys again. I think Ah! Hello? Hello.
The French are loud in the evening, quiet in the mornings when it counts.
Hemingway. Mr. Hemingway.
It's Ernest. And your name?
Oliver.
Oliver, the reporter.
Yeah, the reporter. I'm glad that you showed up. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, yeah, I've finished my writing and I would like to get away from these children. They're making noise. I don't like children in the night when I want to walk by myself.
Shall we walk then?
Shall walk down to the gardens.
Okay. Guys, Hemingway started to walk. We've got him. Ask your questions to me. I'm going to ask them to him. Let's do this. This is going to be exciting, I think. If the children you referred to,
Yes.
we've left them behind us.
We've left them behind. The adolescents can return to their bars, their dances, their fandingos.
I'm a bit starstruck to be with you. I admire your writing very much.
You must be mistaken someone else. I'm not a star. I'm just a man, and I sit here and write when I can, and I drink when I must.
I need to, before... Wow, goodness me, look at that building. Can I stop you for a second?
Please.
I like to take in the sights of Paris. That is a beautiful building.
Yes, it is. It is a pantheon where many of the greats lived and died.
I need to ask you a question that might seem a bit weird, a bit strange,
Yes?
but and I don't want to frighten you at all. You know, I'm just a fellow journalist, writer in the city of lights. But you live around here, right?
I live just a stone's throw away or a cigarette butt's flick away, depending on your proclivities.
Will you take me to where you live?
I will take you to where I live in time. For now, we must walk and take in the night. It is not night in Paris, it is always light. This is the city of lights, and of golden lights at that.
Okay. If you keep walking for a second, Ernest, I just need to tie my shoelace for a second. Guys, I don't quite know what year it is. I don't know how to figure it out. I don't want to just ask him, but keep in mind, everybody, if it is about the 1920s, as I assume, we don't want to frighten him by, like I think I said already, we don't want to put questions about the future. So I'm going to very subtly find out what year we're in, and then we'll base our questions on that. I'll start asking away. Also, I don't want to freak him out with this camera. It doesn't seem like he can notice it, but that seems to be the way this is going. Let's get back into it. Okay, here we go.
Who were you speaking to there just then? Do you speak to yourself in the evening?
I speak to myself and I tell my thoughts to myself.
You must be a writer.
I am a little bit,
Oh, yes?
but not anywhere in the realm of you and your work. I have a question I need to ask you subtly.
Please ask me.
What
subtly.
year is it?
Well, I moved here last year with my wife. What year is it is a good question. What year is any year if it is not the year when you are working and loving well? It is 1923, and I don't know what lays ahead, but I know what lays behind me, and it's not something I want to look at anymore.
So in short, 1923.
Yes.
I know, as a reporter, I'd love to do my due diligence and know everything. But
I am a journalist as well. I do not need to be lectured on the skills of a reporter.
it was
sir.
more of a chatter, like among colleagues.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Peers, as you will.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was just interested as we turn around the Pantheon and continue, just in general to remind me, where are you up to in your career at this point, 1923? How are you feeling that it's going?
Career is a big word, a word I don't like. It is filled with American aplomb and grandeur. I have written stories and I will write more. I am working on a book or two or three, for there are many books in a man's heart, but only one in his hands. And one day I shall write that book.
Sure. So, you're on your first book.
I have not published a book yet,
Okay.
but I will. And I have currently published a couple short pieces.
Of course, and when I said that I was a fan of your work, I was referring to the short pieces. Mr. Hemingway, can I call you, what can I call you?
You can call me Ernest, you can call me a man who is earnest, and you can call me Mr. Hemingway or Sir Hemingway if you must.
Hem?
Hem? That's what my uncle called me when I was a boy, and I don't like my uncle, nor do I like those memories of boyish times.
I'll stop.
I wrote 3 stories and 10 poems, and it has been published, and Sylvia down at Shakespeare can give you a copy if there still remains copies, for it sold out when I first wrote it.
I'm a fan of Shakespeare and Company. He's gone again. I'm going to show you something modern times, guys. Oh gosh, my timing is terrible. It just stopped. Goodness, a bus is behind me. That's the other thing. I don't know how he's going to react to things like buses. He's walking over there, acting quite casually. I'm going to try and mix this in with typical walk show Eiffel Tower stuff, like the Pantheon, where, as Ernest said, great men are buried. Oh, is that what he said? Oh gosh, I've lost him. I've got to catch up. He's flaneuring. Let's ask him about that. Now let me look at your questions as well. A lot of people watching, a lot of people commenting. Hard to keep up. I'd like to hear his experience with the Spanish flu epidemic and any lessons he learned with it. Robinson, that's a good one. And Sean wants to know about Fitzgerald. Okay. Ernest.
Oliver.
as we walk 4 years ago for you, and of course for me, I think that Spanish flu.
The Spanish flu, the great influenza outbreak. I cannot speak much to that flu, for I was not affected, for I have a robust system, and I healed myself in the mountains in Switzerland when the cold came.
Sure.
Flus are one of these things that you must not let take control of your life. Certainly not when you have loved ones that you'd like to spend your days with, particularly in Switzerland, which is where I go in the winter months when it is cold. And while colder in the mountains, it is cleaner there, and the air is fresh, and there is no flu in clean air.
That's true. This will sound weird. Any tips for people if there were another sort of pandemic like that going around?
Read and write well, and love the ones you love. And drink, for drinking brings you peace in the night when it is cold and dark outside.
Have you been drinking today, perchance?
I drink every day, for every day is a chance to drink and to find a bit more about yourself as a man.
Yeah, true. That seems to be a theme.
I am a man, and it is a theme in my work.
Yeah.
But only to the extent that to be human is a theme in work. And though I am a man, there are many women in my life who have supported me. And while I will not name them in any of my works, for I do not need to name them, everyone knows what their names are.
Yeah. Speaking of women with names, I have a friend called Lynn.
Yes.
Her name's Lynn, and she said...
is she from Saskatchewan? I knew a woman from there once.
I don't believe so, no. But she said to me before I told her that I was going to be interviewing you, that I should enjoy a drink together with you, and wondering what you'd order if we were to drink together.
I would order whatever the person ordering for me ordered, for I am a guest of the person inviting me to a drink, and I do not pretend, excuse me for my mistake.
That's that French you've been
Beer
learning.
or whiskey or wine, or cognac or a calvados, if the time calls for it.
Okay, well thanks Lynn, we'll make that happen. Someone asked me before, someone said, were you born in 1923? I said no.
I was not born in 1923. I was born at the turn of the century in 1899 in a small town by the name of Oak Park, Illinois. And it was a fine place, and fine people grew up there, including me. And in the future there may be other men, great builders of things perhaps that are born in Oak Park. Wow. But this I cannot know.
The future is something I'd love to talk to you about as we progress on this walk. But first, Paris is dear to you. You ride all over the city, as I understand. Can you tell me a little bit about where we're walking now?
We are walking to the gardens, for the garden is where I spend my time most when I am hungry and I do not want to smell the restaurants and the food I cannot afford.
You're referring to the Luxembourg Gardens?
The Luxembourg Gardens. What other gardens are there in Paris?
Well, the Monceau.
One.
The Monceau.
This is a word I am not familiar with.
Oh.
There is only one true garden in Paris, and it is the Luxembourg Gardens. And on the other side of the gardens, my friend Gertrude could serve you a tea. She will not serve you alcohol, for now we must drink together while speaking about things.
Yes. Where are we, in terms of if you could take a foreign reporter like myself for a little stroll, where would we be going?
We would be going to this corner here.
Ah, okay. So you lead the way, Ernest.
The gardens are closed at night, although I have perhaps scaled those fences in an earlier time. In the morning I go to the museum and I study the Impressionists, for that is what Gertrude tells me I must do if I want to write well and write true.
And how does that work?
How does what work?
Well, you're studying the Impressionists.
I walk to the museum and I stand in front of the paintings.
Yes.
And then I look at them for many hours.
Is there an inspiration in the style of painting?
I am fed by the images, and I am fed by the subtle realism that seems to supersede the realism of previous epochs, because the brushstrokes are both light but also profound. And Monet is one of my favorites, and though he is an old man now, I think of him fondly when I walk there. And afterwards I go to the Closerie des Lilas.
Oh yeah.
Where I spend some time writing and drinking and writing some more.
Do you find it's expensive in 1923?
It is not expensive, certainly not expensive for a man who needs not much. I may be poor, but I am wealthy in other means. And Hadley is one of those means in which I am most wealthy.
I had a lot of people ask me to ask you about Hadley. But first, I'm very curious where we're going.
We are
back up the street.
We are returning. I have forgotten something in my dearest quarter, and while the gardens are my favorite place in Paris, they are closed this evening.
Did we go down there thinking that they'd be open?
We did not think. We knew that the truth was out there to be proven, and once we proved it, we turned around.
Ah, okay. I'm checking my notes from home. Just briefly.
Where is home? What is home?
I'm an Australian.
I am not.
No, you're an American.
I am an
But
American.
you seem to have a fascination with Paris, which is something we could touch on. I mean,
Paris
you're a
is
young
my
man,
home.
23, 24 years old.
Gertrude once spoke that Paris is her home as much as America is also her country. And I believe that the expat life lends itself to a Parisian acceptance of the flaneur, living for the sake of the walk.
You had a very good French accent when you said that. I'm interested in how good your French is.
It's as good as it has to be and better than it should be.
Sure. In terms of like a A1, B1, C1 level, you know what I'm talking about?
I am not familiar with numerical alphabets, nor do I intend to be, for I'm not a mathematician.
Silly question. You answered it well. But checking my notes from questions I'd written to ask you, how do you deal with writer's block was one of them.
Writer's block is a myth so long as the writer is honest about his own blocks in his life. And if he sits and he is true about sitting, then he will find a way through the block. It is a myth, as I've mentioned, and I will not repeat myself a third time.
No, for sure.
For the myth of writer's block is simply the myth of a lack of living. You must go out into the world and live if you feel like you must write. And in order to write, you must have things to write about.
Do you do a lot of editing on your... Like, you seem like a lovely guy.
Thank you.
But
You seem like a decent fellow,
Sure.
although I cannot assume that you are better than just decent for now.
I feel like your short stories that I've read,
You have written my short stories.
the short stories that I've
I will
read,
be speaking to my lawyer in time.
they're very short, these short stories. And sometimes when you answer a question, you sure can give a long answer. I'm wondering if you edit yourself a lot.
I do never edit myself when I am sober, for when I am sober I must be free and able to speak my mind. It is when I am drunk that I edit, or perhaps it is when I sober that I edit. Or perhaps we are always drunk and always sober in the life that we lead.
It is midnight.
Midnight is just an hour for a time, and it is a different time in different places.
Yeah. Well said. We're walking back towards the Pantheon, the Panthéon, and
You speak French well for an Australian.
has Gertrude Stein introduced you to anyone called Sonia Delaunay?
Sonia Delaunay, I remember her once, but I cannot recall much more of her name, for I've met many people at the Bal Musette where I go to dance with Hadley, and then we spend our time dancing.
What's Hadley like?
Hadley is a woman with charm and with robust wit, and while she likes to spend time at home and leave me to dance at some time, there are other times where she is out with me and we meet many people in the streets. Gertrude is one of her great friends, and Hadley knows how to carry on a conversation better than many women that I have met in my life.
Gertrude, though?
Gertrude, what about her?
Good conversationally.
Good conversationally, although she is harsh and she is witty about her critiques, and you must be ready to accept what she has to say, for she is an editor that has no competition in the world.
Sure. Well, look at this beautiful building. This feels like the kind of building that won't change for 100 years, Ernest.
I don't know what you're referring to about time and change, but I know that Paris has existed far longer than you or I shall ever live.
Maybe your work too? Do you feel like you're trying to write? Are you trying to write work that is timeless?
I cannot bother myself with such lofty goals. I can only write what is true. And what is true is timeless by definition, for what is true is human, and we are all human.
Do you
Except for my cat, which I don't have, but I might have one at some point in my days. Many cats, perhaps. I dream, perhaps, of cats.
I've got two more questions for you. Well, I got many more questions, but two that are on the tip of my tongue. A friend of mine, Lucy.
Lucy.
Yes,
Is she from Ohio?
she could well be.
I knew a Lucy once from Ohio.
Okay, she says to me, what do you prefer, well, she asked me, what do you prefer, beauty or brains, Mr. Hemingway?
Ooh. Are we talking about bulls or women?
That's all I wrote down.
I prefer beauty because beauty is elegance, and without any elegance, I will not have the time to appreciate the brains. But I will say that brains will carry you far further than beauty, although there is something to be said about a beautiful flower in the park.
What do you think about the noisy traffic in Paris?
It is not noisy, not at these hours. Certainly no sounds other than the horses clopping in the streets.
Are you telling me all you heard then was the horses clopping in the streets?
What else would I have heard on an evening such as this?
That means he can't see or hear the scooter traffic. I don't think he noticed the Burger King and the McDonald's that we passed by. We've got Hemingway, if you're just tuning in. Ernest Hemingway, I've ascertained we're in 1923. I don't think he's looked at the camera yet, which makes me think that I've got the real deal here. Your questions are great. Keep them coming. Phrase them in a way that I don't slip up. And it looks like, from my knowledge of Hemingway, that we're walking towards where he would have lived in the 20s, which I assume will probably be the end point for this walk. So we've still got probably another 20 minutes or something as we approach Rue Mouffetard. He just turned. I've got to follow him. There he is. Back to it. Were you lost in your thoughts there, Hemingway?
I was confirmed in my thoughts. I had many good thoughts. I actually have been writing a story that I would like to share with you at a future date. Perhaps this evening if we find a place to sit. A fountain, perhaps, where we can rest our bones.
What's something you've written? Is it published?
It is something I have written and I hope to publish. It is a collection of stories. It is about our time, and it is called In Our Time for now, although in our time there is also darkness and death. And I am not sure if the public is ready to accept the themes of darkness and death in an age of golden dancing and jazz.
I've got an idea, Ernest. It's not going to make any sense to you, but I told you I'm from Australia.
Why do you hold your hand in the air without anything in it?
Oh,
I'm
goodness.
confused.
He's on to us. Because, I'm just going to speak an Australian idea to you for a second. I think the public is desperately keen to hear the work that you talk about. And there's a way...
Tell that to the Transatlantic Review.
There's a way that they can show their appreciation by doing a like on this video. If lots of likes come in, we'll get him to read some of his new stuff.
You're muttering. I don't understand what you're saying.
87 likes, that's not very good. We could probably get to 200. It was an Australian accent. Yeah, so do you know what street we're on now?
I believe we're on the Estrapade, but it does not matter, for all streets lead to home. For the flaneur knows only one destination. It is where he is meant to be.
Wow. I had many more questions in my notes. I forgot to tell you that your senior, Lopez, from LA, bought us a drink.
Interesting.
Before I left Australia.
Lopez, he sounds like a matador. Perhaps he is a man of the bull ring.
I think it's a woman.
Perhaps it is a woman of the bull ring as well, for I do not discriminate when it comes to bulls and rings.
Do you think Laura, my old mate Laura, she wanted to know, do you think it's a woman this time?
Hello, Laura. Where
She
is
can't
she?
hear you.
I
She
hear
can't
her
hear
now
you.
in the streets whispering.
Do you think you'll stay in Paris forever, or do you think that you'll eventually leave? I mean...
I believe once I have conquered the city in my way that I shall move on to other adventures, but I cannot imagine a life without Paris, for Paris never leaves you. And so long as you are true to Paris, she will be true to you. And in many ways, even after my passing one day when I am old and tired, I will leave a feast of ideas for everyone to believe will continue in the world of the lights in the city of Paris.
Describing Paris as a feast is interesting.
I eat well and I drink well, and Paris serves me well.
You should write that down.
I do not have a pen on me, or perhaps I do, but it's not time for me to write. It is time to walk with you, Oliver.
Sure. But just so you know, if you do get any good ideas on this walk, I think you shouldn't hesitate to write them down.
The moon is in the sky and it has risen. The moon rises often. Perhaps it will bring me inspiration in the future years.
That's interesting. We can touch on that again. Okay, there is what do you see coming up the road?
We are towards my home right now.
You should move off the road.
I see a tree.
Gosh, that was lucky. You only saw the tree then?
What else would I see? It is my home. This is the Contrescarpe. We are next to the Amateur, where it is a sad, evilly run cafe.
It's a leg.
There are legs in Paris.
So
There are many legs.
this is your stomping grounds now.
Don't stomp and it is not ground, it is hallowed earth.
This is this is your area though. This is so weird. So what? Hang on. This is Rue Mouffetard here, I believe. That way.
I believe a tree has fallen, for it is time for the wind to take a back seat.
This
the
tree.
Nightlife of the city.
But we're close to your home, right?
We are quite close to my home. It is right just around the corner, perhaps over there. I have a story I would like to read you, however, for I am working on it, and I believe that perhaps you might find it interesting. And if you are a writer, you could give me some edits, perhaps.
It's a really good idea, but I also wonder if we should walk down Rue Mouffetard before doing the story.
Interesting.
But I have an idea that also won't make sense to you.
Yes, sure.
But if you just do your thing and think for a moment,
Yes.
here's something I sometimes do on these Eiffel Tower walk shows. We got two choices here: reading or walking. What do you want first? Whatever I see come up 3 times is what we'll do first: reading or walking. Reading or walking. And then I'll know. Then it's like a choose your own adventure. Walking, I've got a walking. Whoa, everyone's saying walk. You guys don't want the reading. Okay, he wouldn't have got that. I just called my editor. I just called my editor in Australia. My editors, I should say. And overwhelmingly, they suggested to me, keep interviewing you before I hear your work. So we'll continue
If
walking.
they are interested in my voice, they only need read my words that you can find in Sylvia's bookshop in Paris and perhaps other stores throughout the world. Although I fear that they have sold out, for I am a popular writer. Although not famous yet, not yet, but one day surely I
Is
will
that a
be.
goal for you to be famous
I
as a
will be
writer?
the greatest American novelist that ever lived.
Wow.
And I know this in my deep bones.
Wow. That's ambitious.
Ambition is but bravery in another form.
There's a noisy horse.
I only hear my footsteps and the sound of the occasional drunkard at the Café des Amateurs.
Wow. Do you like jazz?
I love jazz. At
Says
the
Cheryl.
Baum Musette, I like to dance to jazz, although I'm not very familiar with some of the greats. I believe in future years there will be more great artists. As of now, I only dance to jazz with Hadley and with the others that let me dance with them, for I asked them if we may dance together.
Perhaps you could write messages in your books and deliver more to Shakespeare and Company.
Shakespeare and Company does not accept messages in books as far as I know. The day that Sylvia does, it will be a glorious day. Perhaps James has already spoken to her about it. Gertrude as well, I'm sure, and Ezra, and Eliot, although Eliot is not worth mentioning, for he is not here, nor was he there.
Sure. You've got a great way with words. I remember a friend of mine, Laura, sort of confirmed something I thought. She said that you seem to be a man of few words, but you don't seem that way tonight. What's going on?
I am a man of few words when it is important to be a few words, and an interview demands that I speak more than I tend to speak.
That's true. Your house is near that corner that we were at just before where you wanted to read.
It is, and I hope that we find something worth walking towards on this beautiful but desolate street.
Do you feel that maybe there is nothing to what's down here? Why don't we go to the end of this street and then...
What is down this street? Well, I know what is down this street, for it is my neighborhood, and there is nothing down this street but adventure and mystery.
Nothing but adventure sounds kind of fun.
Rue de Pot de Fer.
What authors do you admire?
I admire many authors, Dostoevsky amongst the greatest. I also prefer to read Stein right now, for she is reading my work, and I like to read her edits of my work. For when one is working, one must not be jealous of other writers, and
So-
one must write when one is ready to write and not read.
So in short, you like to read your own writing?
I
Is one
must
way to
read my own
paraphrase.
writing when I am editing. I don't know any other way to write.
What's your favorite drink? Did we cover that?
My favorite drink is a drink that is in my hand.
Yep. How do you prefer to write? Do you prefer a pen, a pencil, or a typewriter?
I prefer to stand up. I write when I can with a typewriter, although oftentimes I write with a pencil. And in the cafe, especially at the closerie, I will write in the corner with my café crème. And I will write well and diligently in the mornings until I am tired. And if I am standing in my home and I am writing, it is when my legs are tired that I know it is time to stop writing. One must never leave the writing craft exhausted of the day. One must be excited for the subsequent writings that come.
Wow. What prompted you to get into writing? And before you answer, does this lead back to your house?
This may lead back to my house. It may lead nowhere.
There's a question from Hector in my notebook. Do you prefer journalism or fiction?
Do I prefer journalism or fiction? I prefer what is true, and I find journalism, especially nowadays, is less true than my fiction in a way, and that is why right now I am writing more fiction than journalism, though I do have to pay my bills, and this is why I am a journalist, and the Toronto Star pays me not well, but sufficiently.
You're kind of one of those freelance journalist expats in Paris.
Freelance and expats are words that I don't understand.
I could swear I
I
heard
will
you
not
say.
respond to them.
I could swear you said expat before.
You must be mistaken. There is nothing more devious than putting words in a writer's mouth.
No, you're right. Here's a weird question. I know you haven't finished your first book yet in 1923 and all, but how do you know when a book or a story is finished?
That is a great question and an impossible question and an age-old question. It is finished when it is true and you can both no longer and forever stand to look at it. It is also finished when your editor says so that you must move on even though you would like to stay with it forever, like a woman who you don't want to leave from the bed, but you know that you must wake up and buy the baguette so that you can eat.
Yeah, that's a perfect segue into the next question. Do you consider yourself, and I'm sorry to ask such a sort of crude question, but do you consider yourself to be a great lover?
Love is a question that brings up many emotions, and my injury in the war has prevented me from thinking of love in some ways, but not in other ways.
What was your injury?
I was hit by a mortar shell when I was driving ambulances in Italy, and I did save a man, and I saved his life and was awarded a silver medal for it. But bravery is nothing but reaction in the moment, and I'm not proud of what I did. I am simply human for what I did. Am I a great lover? Hadley is my wife.
As in, we should ask Hadley. Yes?
I must speak to Hadley first before I can answer such questions.
Can we go down that street?
We may go down this street, though I can't promise it. I know where it will lead, even if we are right next to my house.
I have a lot of questions about the future. The future.
You are constantly fretting about the future, from what I can tell.
It's true.
Is this an Australian
Yeah.
condition?
I'm intrigued by the future, especially your future. So one of the questions, or a couple are, do you like fishing yet?
My father fished when I was a boy, and he showed me fishing, and I do like fishing, although in Paris there is limited time to fish.
Big
the
fish,
Seine
though.
is to be looked at. I am a big fish. One day I shall be.
I saw a catfish in the Seine the other day that was 6 feet if it was 2 meters.
I don't understand what meters are. If you mean yards or perhaps feet, then I could understand.
It was the length of a man.
The length of the man depends on the length of his soul, and the length of a soul cannot be measured.
It's tough to have a conversation. Are you interested in exploring Spain yet, I wonder?
I have been to Spain, and Pamplona is a place that I would like to go back to, perhaps in the following years. For in Spain there is fiesta, and in fiesta there is drinking, and there is festivity, and there is life, and there are bulls, and there is death.
That's where we were. Let's sit there. Okay, guys. Guy. Okay, Guy.
I could call my friends up if you would like. Tom, perhaps.
Who's Tom?
He's a friend of mine from the bar.
Which bar?
The Café des Amateurs, right here, as you can tell.
This one?
Yes, the Amateur.
This is Café des Amateurs.
It is a sad, evilly run cafe. But it is a nice place if you like to have dirt on your feet, but a good drink in your belly.
So 1923, Café des Amateurs. Interesting, guys. Not anymore, but we won't freak him out. This square. Shall we sit there on the fountain?
It is my favorite square to sit.
A lot of people back home in Australia were saying, have a cocktail, Oliver, when you meet Ernest. And I said,
What kind of cocktail would you so prefer? There are many cocktails being invented these days at Harry's bar.
Harry's bar.
I, for one, am lost my train of thought, for I would like a drink now. It's been too long.
Maybe we can fix that, but maybe after the interview. I see you're writing there.
I'm making some edits in a work, as I mentioned, in our time. It is something that I hope to publish in the next year, perhaps, or two.
Wow. Okay. I would really very much like to hear this.
They shot the 6 cabinet ministers. at 6:30 in the morning against the wall of a hospital. There were pools of water in the courtyard. There were wet, dead leaves on the paving of the courtyard. It rained hard. All the shutters of the hospital were nailed shut. One of the ministers was sick with typhoid. I shall make an edit. 2 soldiers carried him downstairs and out into the rain. They tried to hold him up against the wall, but he sat down in a puddle of water. The other 5 stood very quietly against the wall. Finally, the officer told the soldiers it was no good trying to make him stand up. When they fired the first volley, he was down in the water with his head on his knees. Down in the water with his head on his knees. I may need to edit this final line, although I'm not sure how yet.
So what is this going to be from?
This is a vignette of many vignettes that I have been writing for a collection of stories that perhaps will be called In Our Time. Or perhaps it will be called The Moon. Or perhaps The Café.
Wow.
Titles only reveal so much, and you cannot reveal everything with a title. And it is better to not reveal too much with your title than to reveal too much.
Well, it's funny that you said it because I looked over your shoulder when you were writing and you had written in capital letters something there.
I've been working on a title for a book I will one day write, and as of now, it is Only the Moon Rises.
Only the moon rises.
Yes, there is nothing else in the world that rises as far as I know, only the moon.
You know, what about the sun?
The sun also rises. This is true, this is true. The sun. What did you say? The sun.
You said I said nothing.
The sun also rises. Perhaps a poem one day.
I know it's a late night. The clock up there says 12:30, and you did mention needing to.
Well, Hadley, of course, would like to see me, for we have much to do in the morning. We must go to Gertrude's, and Sylvia as well has promised me a new batch of 3 stories and 10 poems, which I hope to sell to the Americans.
Wow, to the Americans.
There are bookstores in America. You may not know this as an Australian, but we do have culture. Although culture is here in Paris now, and this is why Picasso is my friend and why I spend time with him.
One day I would love to meet Picasso for an evening stroll. Could you organize that?
Picasso doesn't walk in the night, for he is afraid of the dogs.
Of the dogs? Really? Well, maybe we could all do it together. I'd love to meet Gertrude.
There are roving packs of dogs in the evening in Paris, even wolves of Paris, from what I understand.
Yes.
But I am not afraid of the wolves, for I grew up in nature and I grew up with weapons that protected me from the wolves.
Guns.
Protection devices.
Protection device. I know that you need to get back to...
I must be going. I have my keys, I believe, somewhere in my bag.
Could I walk with you to see where you
must,
live?
if you have to, walk with me.
Great, yeah.
I live nearby and it is not far.
Okay, great. Okay, yep. Guys, it seems to me this is nearing the end. I'm going to try and get a look at where Ernest lives. And, oh yeah, let's see. Where are we? Where are we exactly?
We are on the Rue de Cardinal Lemoine.
I'm just going to have a look at that street sign over there. Guys, if you ever want to track down this place, Rue du Cardinal Lemoine in the 5th arrondissement. There he goes. Gosh, he's hard to keep up with. Going through the bins. I think he was going through the bins. Oh, you found a bottle. You found something, Ernest.
I always leave a bottle there for the end of the evening so I can drink it in the stairs before I walk up the stairs.
Is this... Are we here? This is your home. Number 74?
This is my home.
Before you go in for a second, do you think that, you know, in Paris, often when people live in... you know, you said you wanted to be a famous person.
I am famous. It's just a matter of time.
Well, do you think one day they might put a sign up on the wall to commemorate your life here?
Idolatry is something to be avoided, and I would hope that any sign that commemorates me speaks.
Bear with me a sec. I just want to...
This is Gertrude's key.
I'll leave it. Can I shake your hand before I...
You may shake my hand, Oliver. It's been a pleasure, and I hope to meet again someday down the road.
I hope so too. I'll leave you to it. Thanks very much for your time, Ernest.
Thank you, Oliver.
So, guys, it feels like we gotta. It feels like first I lost internet for a second, but it feels like that was a special walk show. Yeah, he's gone inside now. We've lost him. Ernest Hemingway himself joining the Eiffel Tower for a walk show. If you're new around here and wondering what the heck you just watched, I'm wondering the same thing. There's a lot of thinking. If you really like this idea and wonder who else I could have for similar walks or podcasts or whatever, you know what to do. Share it with your friends. Get in contact. Give me your ideas. Lastly, I'd like to finish with this. In the description below, there is links to everything else, including if you really like this stuff, you can sign up and become a member. If you really want to know more about Hemingway, as I stand on this thing, I got a friend, Samuel, who looks suspiciously like our guest tonight. And there's a link to him below to check him out as well. So that's it from me. I'll see you guys soon. Thanks very much for watching. And I think it's time for me to hit the sack and hopefully dream more about interesting Paris people. Thanks for watching. Au revoir, farewell, have a lovely day.